Oh yeah, we're rolling out the red carpet for this one. Stars are shining bright and the fallen kingdom has come to the White Tower of Hoeth. Bow to your king! The T-Rex pack is on the hunt as the last defenders of Zodal look to continue their 1,000-year war against the forces of chaos. It's Dinobots versus the Pony of the Apocalypse and an armored troll corps tethered to the crown of domination. See what happens when Kroq-Gar and Archaon cross swords in the sunlight outside Safari. I don't think they ever faced each other in the lore, but if they had, it would have been a duel for the ages. And for the Lizardmen, we're looking at two Carnosaurs as the main killing power here. Kroq-Gar and Grymloq can take on Shaggus, they can take on dragons, they have the swiftness of Itzel for chasing after jeeps like Rexy in Jurassic Park, and they have the Hand of the Gods for deleting casters from the game from downtown. Shem's Burning Gaze, well, his version of it is a pretty powerful single entity killer. Behind them are a Heaven's King Priest and the Star Chamber Temple Guardians. Razordawn Hunting Pack are also a solid choice for sniping out some high armor lords or monsters, and a Skink and Saurus front line with an ancient salamander in the vanguard. Not quite the force of nature it once was, but it can still punish infantry blobs with globs of magma from its mouth, and it has the range to force chaos into some rather hasty engagements, which is some useful utility as well. On the other side, Archaon the Everchosen has his Slayer of Kings, which gives him some of the highest single target DPS in Warhammer 2, and perhaps more importantly, his Crown of Domination, which is a fantastic and probably necessary choice when going for an armored troll corps. Terror routes and low leadership are by far the biggest issues trolls face, so if you have AoE immune to psychology, your monstrous infantry should perform quite a bit better when there are dinos stomping nearby. Got some chosen halberds in the rear, bunch of armor-piercing troops in the front line, and some Vanguard deployed Marauder Javcav with their Warhound buddies in the back of the map. So one of the biggest factors in a battle like this is that Archaon has a tiny hitbox when he's on Dorgar. Carnosaur animations aren't as effective at hitting small targets like that because they tend to jump around and whiff a lot. So Archaon wants to get aggressive at the start and zone out that ancient salamander so it doesn't have free shots into the infantry. Gonna get some good shots at the start, dealing some great damage to the Chaos Warriors, killing a few models as well. But Archaon's got the jukes like Barry Sanders. What's that Chris Berman quote when he's doing the highlights on SportsCenter? He goes, "Whoop!" And he's just gonna move completely out of the way and get in on the ancient salamander. Now he's pinned down by the Skink cohort, but his Slayer of Kings is popped, his stand or die is popped, and he's taking no damage because he has 84 melee defense. So even Kroq-Gar will have a lot of issues landing attacks when melee defense is that high. He's using that opportunity to get the Warhounds in from the back and just trying his best to completely tie down the Salamander play and the Razordawn play and make sure they cannot fire. Armored Trolls are following up close behind, and even though they will get tossed around like Gorbals when they're jumping through the air and they get smacked by a Carnosaur tail, they are a decent choice here. They have the mass to pin dinos in place, the punching power to chunk their way through Source and Temple Guard, when they're supported well of course, and the regeneration to continue being a nuisance well into the late game. For the Lizardmen, it's super important to not YOLO in and fully engage with all the infantry. Both the Razordawns and the Ancient Salamander need help to keep the Warhounds off them and the Marauder Cav off their butts, and they need time to fire in and deal good damage. So a layered defense, only sending in a handful of units at a time, is probably the go-to strat here, while Grymloq and his Carno bro poke and prod Archaon and the Trolls. For Chaos, it's important to keep things high and tight, maybe a little bit blobby at the start, just to make sure those armored trolls are getting immune to psychology and won't terror route when fighting the Carnosaur. Razordawns have great avenue of fire to shoot in on the armored trolls and Curse of the Midnight Wind, hitting a huge blob of them, but the trolls are holding steady for now and doing a good job. Slayer of Kings was not incredibly impactful on the first go-around, didn't manage to get a whole lot of damage done to either Carnosaur, but the infantry grind will certainly go in the favor of Chaos. Chosen Halberds, Chaos Warriors, they're just a leg up on Red Crested Skinks, there's no question about it. But if these Skinks and Saurus can fight and die and give the Ancient Sally and give those Razordawn Hunting Pack enough time to fire in, then the infantry grind could start turning more in their favor. And of course, Grymloq and his Carnosaur bro are a huge threat to a big portion of this Chaos army. They aren't great for killing infantry, but they are great for terror routing them and turning the fight in your favor while things are getting really blobby in the center. Everything trying to cram in there and make use of that immune to psychology from the Crown of Domination. We can see the Chaos Warriors, even though they took a decent amount of damage with the help of Flaming Sword of Ruin, they managed to cut their way through the Red Crested Skinks. They're breaking through now, and they're trying to get into the rear on top of the Lizardmen Hunting Pack and the Ancient Salamander. But still, there are some veterans in the rear as an Overcast Windblast rips through from the flank, from that Heaven Skink Priest, and the infantry support in the back means that it won't be incredibly easy to tie down these range troops and finish them off for good. Saurus moving forward to cover the Lizardmen Hunting Pack's retreat, and Grymloq and his Carnosaur bro going back to back, fighting in and amongst some armored trolls, while the Marauder Javcav fires in, tries to do some damage to them. Ancient Salamander is still online, and even though it's much better for killing infantry, it spits super hot fire, and that's the troll's biggest weakness. If you can fire in on the trolls, it should be able to kill a model every single time it lands a shot, or close to it anyway. Armored trolls doing their best to push their way through the source, and if they're able to do that, they have the speed to hunt down Lizardmen Hunting Pack and shut them down for good as well. But the Star Chamber Guardians won't go quietly into that good night. Their halberds flashing in the midday sun, and they're holding an entire flank down by themselves as Kroq-Gar and Grymloq get on top of Archaon, start doing the chimichanga shuffle, and all the buffs are getting popped now. Sacred Spawning of Zodal, Cascading Fire Cloak for the melee defense, stand or die. Archaon trying to hold the line here, but he's up against two Carnosaurs. Might need to retreat from that situation, getting a little bit risky for him. Star Chamber Guardians down to half HP. They're fighting Chaos Warriors with great weapons. They're fighting Marauders with great weapons. They're fighting Armored Trolls, and they're supported by Flaming Sword of Ruin. So this is hurting. That's a lot of armor-piercing damage going their way, but they're holding that entire flank down by themselves, which is incredibly impressive. And honestly, at this point in the battle, it's needed for the last defenders of Zodal. If the right flank breaks right here, could get nasty pretty quick for the children of the Old Ones. But the Red Crested Skinks and Saurus are still fighting. They're still doing what they can. They're up against Chosen Halberds. And one thing that you'll notice about the Chaos Army is that it's not an incredibly aggressive one when it comes to pure infantry. Most of their good infantry isn't really high DPS. It's more take it out, survive for a long time, and outgrind you. And they are outgrinding at the moment. Marauder Javcav being chased off by the Carnosaurs in the rear, and Archaon managed to run away and get on top of the Ancient Salamander. That's a nightmare situation for the single entity monster. Slayer of Kings was popped there. It would probably already be dead, but Kroq-Gar and his Hand of the Gods bounding into melee combat, giving the Ancient Sally the time it needs to escape, and it should be able to return to the fold. And again, Archaon is faced with the problem he's faced this entire game. He has to outduel two Carnosaurs. Obviously, he has some support. Looks like the Star Chamber Guardians might not be able to hold on for too much longer. Archaon manages to escape for the third time this game, but each time he is dropping lower and lower. But everywhere else on the battlefield, Chaos is having a grand old time. They're pushing through the infantry. Cold-blooded popped on the second Feral Carnosaur to keep it from rampaging, although it might not have been entirely necessary considering that's where it wants to be at the moment. Killing Cav is certainly something it's very good at doing, and the Sacred Spawning of Zodal popped again. Archaon popping all of his buffs, Flaming Sword of Ruin, Standard Die, and the Slayer of Kings, but it's not enough. Grymloq manages to land the killing blow, and the Everchosen is off the field, which means no more Crown of Domination, no more immune to psychology for the trolls, and as if on cue, they are already beginning to terror rout. But they're trolls, they come back, they regenerate, they continue to be annoying well into the late game, and that's kind of what they're known for. When you got two Carnosaurs, two T-Rexes fighting back to back, those armored trolls, they're gonna be in for a whale of a time. Life finds a way, death finds a way, and the trolls are feeling the fangs and the claws of these apex predators, and they're shattered. They just got the brakes completely beaten off them there. That was very satisfying to watch. But there are more armored trolls. They're hunting down the King Priest of the Lore of Heavens, who will not be able to cast any more Harmonic Convergences or Curses of the Midnight Wind if it does manage to get hunted down by the trolls, which it probably will. No support on that side, and Lizardmen are looking dangerously thin at this point in the game. Armored trolls can outrun everything on the battlefield except for the Carnosaurs themselves, and so they have their pick of the litter in terms of infantry engagements, and some corrosive vomit and a couple right hooks should be enough to finish off the skink cohort and send them running to the edges of the map. They're broken now too. Ancient Salamanders surrounded by Marauder Javcav, and the Carnosaurs are coming in from behind to see what they can do about that. There's still some ammunition left in that Ancient Sally. Couple of volleys left. Would be important to keep it online if it's possible to do so. Cold-blooded, trying to give it a little bit of a leadership bonus and keep it in the fight, but it's breaking now and going the wrong way towards the armored trolls. Full surround off on it, and poor leadership is beginning to rear its ugly head for both sides. Morale going to be a massive factor as we edge closer to the end of this replay. Ancient Sally trying to get some space from the armored trolls. Kroq-Gar doesn't want to go in and stuff up the monstrous infantry because the chosen halberds are nearby. Not a lot of models or HP left on them, but they're chosen halberds at the end of the day, and it won't take very long for them to cut through a Carnosaur if they're able to bite deep into its flank with those huge halberds. So Carnosaur content to fight the armored trolls for now, and they broke just in time as the chosen halberds closed the gap. Carnosaur should be able to escape there. Kroq-Gar moving away. Warhounds coming in, trying to stuff up the Carnosaur one more time to give the chosen more time to close the gap too. But yeah, it doesn't look like the Ancient Salamander will be able to come back to the fold. That means it will just be Kroq-Gar, Grymloq, a feral Carnosaur, and maybe a handful of remaining infantry. But on this side, Chaos wants none of this action. This is a true apex predator. Grymloq is one of the scariest monsters in Warhammer Fantasy, and he's showing it now. No man and no creature wants to stand and take on that behemoth. And the Chaos Warriors are feeling the effects of those rending teeth and claws on this side as well. The Carnosaurs are a problem for Chaos right now. There's no question about it. And anything that routes, especially the armored trolls, will get hunted to the borders of the White Tower of Safri. Kroq-Gar has a really important role to play here as the Hand of the Gods shrieks its way forth and takes out an armored troll. Dukin! Yeah, armored trolls do not enjoy armor-piercing flaming damage. That is, generally speaking, a painful thing for them to endure. And a couple of tail thwaps on the Marauder great weapons. Also a great way to clear them out too. So, chasing these trolls all the way to the edge, making sure they cannot return, because they have a ton of models, and regeneration could allow them to get back to half HP or more. It could be very problematic if they were allowed to survive. Thankfully, he has the swiftness of Itzel, which means he can get up to 90 plus speed, and, oh, actually well over 100. Yeah, that's very useful for hunting down armored trolls, and we won't be seeing them again. But Chaos still has a whole other force hanging out in the woods. They chased after the Ancient Salamander. They're content to sit over there for a little bit and get some of their vigor and their stamina back. And they're marching their way now. We'll put it in double fast forward to close the distance here. So, full unit of armored trolls, only missing one model, I believe. Another Hand of the Gods coming out. Probably would have been better to use those on Archaon, to be honest, but at this point, like, taking out an armored troll model every single time you do it isn't too bad. And literally, all we have left is a feral Carnosaur, Kroq-Gar on slivers of HP, and then a really beat up and tattered Chaos force. Here we go. The finale about to begin. Terror routes will probably be a problem for Chaos here, but if they can hold the line, they might be able to kill Kroq-Gar, and after that happens, the feral Carnosaur might not have the leadership to get stuck in and carry the day. It doesn't get a whole lot more epic than this. Carnosaur bros going into melee. Swiftness of Itzel pops. Armored trolls getting absolutely dumpstered by those gnashing teeth off the start. Kroq-Gar just bounded through the entire enemy army into the rear. And they are demolishing the remnants of this Chaos Horde. And it's looking like, without the Crown of Domination, without that AoE immune to psychology, they don't have the staying power. They're too beat up. They don't have the leadership. It's a mass rout, and the last defenders of Zodal will take it on the backs of two Carnosaurs, and they will carry the day to victory. So yeah, there's a reason you see Shaggoths typically in this matchup. They are fantastic for killing pretty much any dinosaur threat, and they can go fisticuffs with Carnosaurs and beat them. Kolek and a Shaggoth will typically, I think, have an advantage over Kroq-Gar, Grymloq, and a Feral Carnosaur, or even a Scarvet on a Carnosaur. But it can go either way depending on how you use the units. Generally speaking, though, Shaggus or Dragon Ogres are quite good here. But there's a lot to be said for Armored Trolls, and I think the idea was pretty cool. Going for Crown of Domination, going for that Immunopsychology to keep the Armored Trolls in the fight, but the core tenet of such a build is that you cannot lose Archaon. I like the aggression from him early. He did a great job zoning out the Ancient Salamander, and just as a lightning rod to keep Kroq-Gar and the Carnosaur focused on him. And Standard Die popped when he's got 84 melee defense. Even Kroq-Gar will have a ton of issues actually landing attacks. So he was used well for the first half there and for most of the battle, really. But there were a couple times where he really should have focused maybe a little bit more on the defense and just on buffing the trolls, making sure they were not terror routing. And if he had done a little bit less dueling with Archaon there, I think he could have been in a really good position to win that game. It ended up being incredibly close anyway. I mean, Kroq-Gar was slivers of HP from death. If Archaon's there in the late game with Slayer of King's Pot, one or two more attacks could have completely changed that battle and turned it on its head. GG to Turbo Fisto. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you next time.